morning, America, and welcome to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this hour. We have an interesting guest who will be joining us this morning. We will be discussing firearms rights with Mr. Charles Heller. Mr. Heller is the new executive director for the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. The JPFO is one of the most aggressive Second Amendment programs and organizations out there. Their policy is simply never again. And I fully stand behind their position. I fully stand behind their intent. And we'll be speaking with Mr. Heller at about quarter after. My bullet points for this morning are in reference to a interview that occurred yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening on Piers Morgan with Alex Jones. With all due respect to Mr. Jones and his position, which I fully agree with, I do not think that Mr. Jones provided us with a very, very solid performance in reference to his discussion. I think essentially that Mr. Jones placed us in a position of looking like a group of crazies, to be blunt. Mr. Jones, while he could have gone on there and provided clear, well-reasoned, and articulate arguments, unfortunately let his emotions run away. And instead of putting forth a clear and defined argument as to why the Second Amendment has the absolute rule of law, number one, and number two, why it is an imperative and necessary function of our society, he instead allowed his emotion to cloud his ability to provide a clear, defined message. He showed America that gun owners are wild-eyed crazy men coming down from the mountains. And I don't think he did our position or our cause any justice. I like Mr. Jones. However, I don't think he performed well in reference to providing a well-reasoned and articulated argument to the vast percentage of America that does not understand firearms ownership and its benefits. And that's the end of my bullet points for this morning. If you'd like to call us, you may do so on our Wits End Classic Barbershop hotline. You can call us at 257-1111 and 866-554-6636. We will be joined by Mr. Heller again at about quarter after the hour. And before that arrives, I would like to just remind you folks about a couple of our sponsors, because I don't want to spend an enormous amount of time running through that information at that point. Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue, 257-7799. You can find them online at batterystation.com. Strong supporter of our show, about the only place left where you can find bulk ammunition. So I would strongly encourage that you find those folks. 303 Washington Avenue, batterystation.com, 257-7799. Bill Stone from Stone Construction at 293-0116. If you are interested in working with a remodel job or any kind of custom or new construction, by all means, please feel free to contact Bill Stone. He's a great fella, 293-0116, and an expert in his field. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
I really enjoy listening to you and what you're talking about, this Mr. Jones and everything, but I got one good question here.
Yes, sir.
I'm a life member of the NRA, and I'm hoping, and I pray that they do not compromise anymore like they did back in the 60s when the registration started, and I'm sure you may or may not remember that at that time. When
I certainly do, and I can agree with your sentiments completely. Personally, The NRA, in my opinion, has not been a stalwart defender of our Second Amendment rights. They constantly use the term hunting and sporting, and quite frankly, they have not educated the American populace about the real nature and the true reason for the Second Amendment. And that is frankly why I have Mr. Heller coming on with us this morning. And also, as a quick update and a notice, I have Larry Pratt, who's the executive director for Gun Owners of America, who will be joining us on Friday. And
I am a member of them also.
Great. Outstanding. And I strongly encourage you, if you are a member of the NRA, to make sure that you contact the NRA and explain to them that if they do not stand firm on this issue of gun control, and if they do not take an absolute no-compromise position, that you will eliminate your membership, and furthermore, that you will take your with you 10 other members, because it is imperative that the NRA stand up and do the right thing by their membership, by our republic, and by the citizens of the United States of America.
Well, that's right. But one thing I do want to mention here, and this basically is a question, not questioning you. So don't think that.
Understood.
But from this person that we call a President Obama, to the people going clear back into Arizona and everything, and the people you're talking about, that senator, that lady that was shot,
yep.
That's going on the gun control.
Yeah.
Okay, how can anyone, and I'm going to ask this very, very open and blatantly, how can anyone say they support the Second Amendment, yet they want gun control? How can you do it?
Well, but for the same reason that they believe that you can have an ATF and a Second Amendment in the same universe. You cannot, because the two are like matter and antimatter. They cannot coexist simultaneously in the same space.
So, because I remember Obama in his campaigning, he said, I support the Second Amendment, but that individual has signed every anti-gun bill that's come across his desk, and now he supports the Vice President of the United States to head a anti-gun task force with our tax money, going against our Constitution, using our tax money. I mean, how can this be? Well, no reason to question that, because it's happening, and we're allowing it. And that's, to me, is where the NRA and the Republican Party needs to stand up, as well as the Democrat Party, and say, hey, you went far enough. We need to support the Second Amendment as what was stood for with our founding fathers.
Well, I'm 100% in agreement with you. And again, I clarify for any of you out there who are NRA members that your goal is to make sure that the NRA is just as alerted and just as noticed as your congressional representatives by clarifying to them that as a member, you expect them to stand up for your rights, not for hunting, not for sport shooting, but you expect them to stand up for the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Right. And I appreciate your call. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you for your show.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, folks, we are going to be joined by Mr. Charles Heller. Charles is the executive director for the Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. You can find their website at jpfo.org. I encourage you to get out there and look on their website, because they have an astounding amount of information out there. And this is, in my opinion, one of the best Second Amendment promoting organizations that is out there in the nation this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Heller.
Good morning. Mr. Heller is gone. I'm just his humble son, Charles.
Okay. Well, forgive me, Charles, for misinterpreting that. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. I'm glad I could be had.
And he's got a sense of humor, folks. I like it. Hey, on your website, you've got some great information out there, and I think it's it's critical that people. I'll tell you what, you've got a thing up there about gun deaths since January 1, and then you can compare that with falling deaths and so forth. I would love to know if you've got that as a widget that people could post up on their Facebook and or their websites. And
I don't know.
And if you don't, let's make that happen.
But if you email to jpfo@jpfo.org, that's our webmaster.
Sure.
And he can probably fix it so that can happen.
That would be an astounding tool in the hands of the Second Amendment group and promoters and supporters. So,
But actually, you have that on your website as well, so you could do it.
Well, that's true. That's true. There you got me there. And by the way, that is what I do for a living. I mean, I do this as a voluntary issue. So you're right. I guess I can fix that. I'll help your guy.
Yeah.
I'll help your guy create it as a widget if he hasn't already done so that not only I, but literally tens of thousands of others who are supporters of our Second Amendment can do that. So,
right.
You came on with JPFO in what, about 2011, correct?
Yes, sir. In the summer of 2011.
Okay. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a background? And we've got about a minute and a half left before our mandatory capitalist commercial break. But if you wouldn't mind maybe again giving us a little bit of an oversight as to what your background was.
Sure. I'm originally from Chicago, and son of a law enforcement officer and a music teacher for a mom. And my granddad was a judge, back when judges in Illinois were elected. And once they stopped electing him and started appointing him, he couldn't get appointed, but he could get elected. And he retired in 1950. But I knew what certiorari meant before I knew what the infield fly rule was. And so I vividly remember the distinction when the Miranda decision came down in '64, sitting in the back seat of our '64 Oldsmobile, the argument between the law enforcement officer and the judge about what was going to happen. And the judge did turn out to be right, by the way. Anyway, and I moved to Arizona from Chicago because in 1978, when I was 21, Chicago, the great scam that was killed by the McDonald decision last year in Chicago was, you can have any gun you want in Chicago as long as it's registered. Okay, here's my registration. Sorry, we don't accept those. And so that was the scam in Chicago.
Right.
So as a result, I moved. I voted with my feet. I said any government that doesn't support my right to keep and bear arms doesn't get my tax money, and I moved to a state where free men walked around with a gun on their hip if that's what they felt like they needed to do. And so I did. I turned 21, and came to Arizona, and I bought my first handgun, a Harrington & Richardson 949. And I bought leather for it.
I know that pistol well. That's a wonderful little 22.
Yes, it is. And I happily ever after in Arizona. And I became a firearms instructor in 1992 and a concealed weapons permit instructor in 1994. I've been teaching the class in Arizona for almost 18 years now, consistently every month, several classes, some months, and I've certified thousands of people to get a concealed weapons permit. I was one of the 4 co-founders of the Arizona Citizens Defense League. In 2005, we realized there was a huge gap in the need for lobbying for the right to keep and bear arms in Arizona. We formed the group, and we went rocketing past NRA as the number one right to keep and bear arms group in Arizona in 2006.
We've got a break here. We'll be right back with you. Thanks. Hang on 1 second.
Me too.
It's just like walking around the world, but it doesn't take as long.
That would take a long time.
No, really. My friend Kayla's from India, and Lily's family is from China. And Beza travels a lot to see her family in Ethiopia.
And don't forget the Murphys.
I really like our neighborhood, and all the families from different places.
We're lucky, sweetie. We live in a diverse community.
Diverse?
Yeah, it's a place where people from all different backgrounds come together and live, and share, and appreciate everything that makes us special.
I like it.
Neighborhood diversity promotes a greater sense of engagement, teaches that stereotypes are wrong, and better prepares our children for the global community. To learn more about how the Fair Housing Act promotes diversity, visit HUD.gov/Fair Housing. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, and familial status. A message from the Department of Housing and Urban Development in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
America's Voice Now with Michael Evans.
All right, we are back with Mr. Charles Heller. He is the executive director for JPFO. I encourage you to get to their website and learn more about that organization and join it. The website is jpfo.org. So, Mr. Heller, if you don't mind kind of just finishing off your bio there so that we have a fair understanding of where you came from.
Sure. In 1999, I got into an argument which resulted in my getting into talk radio, and I formed my own program. First, I had a free market radio show, and still do, called Swap Shop, where people buy and sell and trade anything they want as long as it's lawful and moral. So machine guns are welcome, but no pornography, because, one has social value and the other doesn't. And then I started one called Liberty Watch, and then the second hour of Liberty Watch called America Armed and Free. And that's how I first became involved with JPFO. I wrote a song that went on an album called I Will Live Free, and I did that with Aaron Zellman at JPFO and a local guy here by the name of Dan Starr, who now, by the way, is also a talk show host on our station, and he has a program about music. And we produced this song, and I wrote about 90% of the song called The Guardian, which if I had my head on straight, I'd have sent you so you could have used for bumper music. But
really?
Anyway,
what were you thinking?
What was I thinking? I'll send it to you after this interview is over. I'll send it to you.
There you go.
Because I have your email address now. So, in 2005, we formed Arizona Citizens Defense League, and we have gotten 27 bills through the Arizona legislature and signed by the governor that are pro-rights, including the flagship constitutional carry. You no longer in Arizona need a concealed weapons permit to stick a gun in your pocket or anywhere else, as long as you're not in a prohibited place like a nuclear generating plant or a school.
Right.
You can be anywhere you want, or a place that serves alcohol, if you by open container where you can consume it there. But with only 8 exceptions, you can be anywhere in Arizona with a loaded, concealed, suppressed machine gun if you want. As long as you have the tax stamp for the machine gun and the suppressor, you can carry it loaded, concealed, without a permit, anywhere you want in the state of Arizona except those 8 prohibited places.
Outstanding.
And that's what we got. That's what we got done in Arizona because of the work we did with the Arizona Citizens, and I mean we because it's a huge effort. It's not me. It's a bunch of dedicated volunteers. I happen to be their communications director. But anyway, because of that, I got noticed, and the great gun writer Alan Corwin suggested to the board of JPFO that when Aaron Zellman passed away, the founder of JPFO, that they consider me. They looked over my background and saw what this organization did in Arizona and asked me to be their executive director, and I gladly accepted.
Outstanding. Your organization has been, in my opinion, one of the preeminent defenders of our Second Amendment rights. And you folks have a motto which I love, which is never again. And the simple reality is that who knows better than individuals who've gone through the Holocaust to know exactly what the unlimited potential is for governments to abuse you after they've restricted your amendment or our Second Amendment in this case. And I think that's an outstanding statement, and it's very clear. It's just kind of like the no compromise argument,
Well, unfortunately, the never again Jews moved to Israel, and the please take my guns Jews moved to New York and then retired to Florida. And we like to say we put the gunpowder in never again because it's a hollow statement. In many of the Jews in the United States, it's a hollow statement.
Yeah.
The problem is that Judaism encourages has necessarily encouraged for survival a somewhat collectivist mindset. Now, many of us who embrace the religion don't embrace the collectivism, but you wouldn't know it from listening to the media.
Right.
And so, why that's important is because in the collective mindset, when an individual raises his head and says, "I will live free, and I will protect myself, and I will carry the means of protection to protect myself, the tools of protection to protect myself and my family," sometimes that scares the rest of the herd.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of Jews are anti-gun. And let's put it this way, they're not really anti-gun, they're anti-freedom.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but what we do is we have a rabbinic director, Rabbi David Ben-Dori, and he takes them apart from a spiritual perspective using biblical law when Jewish people make statements that are against the right to keep and bear arms. When they do it publicly, we put out editorials, we put out on our website, we occasionally get them published in other publications, and we get noticed nationally for doing this. And nobody attacks us as being as anti-Semitic when an Orthodox rabbi is the guy doing the spiritual correction.
That's one way to avoid the argument, right?
Yes, we are what I say, Jewishly bulletproof.
Now, can non-Jews join the organization?
absolutely. You do not have to be Jewish to join JPFO, but it doesn't hurt.
Well, you're either born Jewish or you convert, right? So for those of us who aren't either born that way or converting or willing to convert, we'd still like to sometimes get behind the organization. And here's my thought on this. We're all Americans first and foremost, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a Baptist or a Protestant, or an atheist for that matter. The simple reality is this: if we don't have our freedom, and if we don't have a liberty in our country, then quite frankly, no one will be able to practice any religion. And that essentially puts us all in the position of Americans first, republic first, religion later. Simply put.
Yeah. That's why in the Constitution there's no religious litmus test to be an official in government. But I'd like to tell you something. What you just said struck a responsive chord with me about not only about patriotism, but also about a guy that called me a few days ago. He gave us a donation of $500, and he's a repeat donor. And he said, and I called him to thank him, because when people donate money, that's what part of my job is, to call up and say, hey, that was really neat that you did that. We acknowledge you for it.
Sure.
And he said to me, I'm an atheist-leaning agnostic, but you guys do great work, and you're an important organization. That's why I support you. And I got to tell you, that's not what I was expecting him to say, and it took my breath away.
Yeah. But he gets it, right? It's American first.
Yep.
All the rest of this stuff comes later. Your ideology, your politics, your religion, all of those things come after, because without liberty, without freedom, all the rest of it is moot.
Mm-hmm.
So, your organization really has stepped out there into the forefront to say, we are going to take a position that has a no-compromise status, and that is never again. And unfortunately, I think most, I had a caller earlier who was saying that, we can't allow the NRA as an example, and I know that's a competing organization for you, but yet it's not. And yet they're competing for membership and just not the same focused goal. My problem with the NRA is that I think in a lot of instances, their mantra is, hey, you can't take these away, we need them for sporting and hunting. And my point is, sporting and hunting are not mentioned in the Second Amendment. The premise and the purpose behind it was very clearly outlined by all of the founders, and that was simply this: to protect us as a last resort against tyranny in government. Period.
Right.
And sporting and hunting have nothing to do with it.
Right, and you got to ask yourself, if ultimately they intend to commit tyranny, are they going to send senators to enforce the law, or policemen and soldiers?
Right. There you go.
And I mean, we don't like to talk about it, because I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in the kind of society where the only answer to your government is over the front sight of a rifle.
Sure.
That's not a way to establish great longevity. You may, in that case, end up sacrificing your life for freedom if that's what's necessary. But if that's the alternative to living as a slave, there's Steve Ross, a great singer, has a song called "I'd Rather Die on My Feet Than Live on My Knees."
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think enough Americans, and we hear all the time. We're in a very, very ultra-conservative area. We're in the Ozarks in Missouri, and
Bible Belt.
A lot of folks here actually have more guns than your local gun store, especially now, because this is just that's the nature of this area. I mean, hunting is and sport shooting and firearms ownership are basic tenets of life here. And, our folks are very, very dedicated to that. And I hear a lot of people say, well, from my cold, dead hands and all that kind of thing. But the simple truth is that I think, and I know humankind, and the simple reality is that I think when it comes down to it, a lot of folks may say that, but when it comes to the real crunch time and, someone's knocking on their door, they're going to say, yeah, they're in the back room over there. And I fear for America because of that.
Well, I'll tell you, if you look at books like Unintended Consequences, and there's one more recent than that. I just had the author on in Dagnam, I can't, on my radio program, and I can't think of his name or the name of the title of the book. I'll get it at the next break, and I'll have it for you. But at the time they knock on your door, that's probably not the best time to commit an act of resistance for a couple of reasons. Number one is they always do that when you're at the most severe disadvantage.
Exactly.
And also, they're lawfully entitled to use all the deadly force they want if you threaten them.
Right.
And if you look at unintended consequence, there's several scenarios in that book that show what could happen if government became tyrannical, and what very well might happen if they did and tried to forcibly come in and seize people's guns and detain them.
Sure.
And there's a cascade event that happens that
takes time.
I hear the music.
Sure. Well, listen, we're chatting this morning with Charles Heller. He is the executive director for jpfo.org. We'll be back in just a moment.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. 2 years ago today, now former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was one of 19 people shot in a supermarket parking lot in Tucson, Arizona. Now she and her husband Mark Kelly have announced a new political action committee against gun violence.
In an op-ed piece in USA Today, Giffords and Kelly write, achieving reforms to reduce gun violence and prevent mass shootings will mean matching gun lobbyists in their reach and resources. In other words, they need to raise a lot of money. No specific comment on the group from the NRA, which has called for armed guards in all schools after the Newtown, Connecticut school shootings.
Fox News Radio's Rich Johnson. For 2 years in a row in college football, 3 of the last 4, the Alabama Crimson Tide wins the national championship, rolling over Notre Dame 42-14. Nothing close about it. Notre Dame didn't score until they were down 35-0. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Here we go with round 2 of Hope and Change. Looking forward looks bumpy and rocky. Nobody's stimulated by high unemployment and tax increases. Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance can help you be ready to face the challenges of the next 4 years. We have long-term food storage, ammunition, informational books and DVDs, water purifiers, and a whole lot more. Come see us at 3225 Highway 62 East, Suite number 3, just a half-mile past Walmart in Mountain Home, or call us at 492-4030. That's Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance.
Okay, class, let's all sing our 911 song. There's a fire, there's a fire.
Dial 911.
There's a fire, there's a fire.
Dial 911.
If you can't raise an arm,
dial 911.
If you're suddenly having trouble speaking these words,
dial 911.
Face suddenly goes all numb,
dial 911.
All of a sudden get the worst headache of your life,
dial 911.
Sudden loss of sight in one or both eyes,
dial 911.
If you think stroke may be the cause, never wait to call,
dial 911.
911. Making a difference in someone's life is elementary. Know the sudden signs of stroke and dial 911 immediately if they appear. Time lost is brain lost. For more information, visit powertoendstroke.org. Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
Complete service and satisfaction is the Earls Dodge Jeep difference from all the other dealers in the Ozarks. Hello, I'm Janet, and I invite you to come check out our new and pre-owned on the lot at Earls Dodge Jeep on North Highway 63 across from the fairgrounds in West Plains, where we go out of our way to make you happy. That means doing what it takes to make sure you're satisfied with your total package on your new purchase, which means taking care of you after the sale. It all adds up at Earls Dodge Jeep, where buying a vehicle is as simple as it should be.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, we'll have a mainly clear sky, mostly sunny throughout today. The high temperature 50 degrees. It's going to be mostly cloudy tonight, low 36. Rather cloudy for tomorrow, high 52. Tomorrow night's going to be mostly cloudy with showers developing, low 40. We'll have cloud showers and perhaps a thunderstorm on Thursday, high 60. Friday, a mostly sunny day. We'll have a high of 62. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, check out our website, the all-new my1071thepoint.com.
America's Voice Now with Michael Evans.
We are joined this morning by Mr. Charles Heller, the Executive Director for Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Encourage you to get out there to their website at jpfo.org. They have a series of campaigns out there, and maybe you can kind of bring us up to speed on your campaigns that your organization is working towards and how you feel that that'll affect the Dianne Feinstein proposed bill that she's expecting, or we're expecting to see sometime in January?
Well, we have a number of videos. We're a publisher and we're an information organization. We're not a lobbying organization. But one of the things we've done is we've joined with the Coalition to Stop the Ban. There's a number of other groups around the country, from GOA to some of the local citizens defense leagues. We call them the CDLs, but when you say CDL, people think you mean commercial driver's license.
Yeah.
But the Arizona Citizens Defense League, Virginia Citizens Defense League, the Nevada organization, there's a number of them. This Coalition to Stop the Ban. And what's happened is there's a number of proposals on the table. Probably the most obvious one, the most notable one, is from the senator, the occupant of the senior senator seat from California. And what they want to do is write a much tighter ban than was enacted between 1994 and 2004, and make it permanent, and turn everything in that's an AR-15 clone and about 130 other pattern rifles, from the M1 carbine to the Ruger Mini 14, which wasn't included in the last ban, and anything, and plus any magazine that holds more than 10, and turn them all into Class 3 items.
Including a thumbhole stock, which, a lot of folks have bought those and put those on 1022s, and suddenly now that becomes, because it's got a thumbhole stock for target shooting, becomes an assault weapon, which I think is just absurd.
Well, also any device which holds more than 10 rounds. Now, for a while during the ban, when all you could get was a 10-round magazine, they made a Star device that held 4 10-round magazines.
I remember those.
Even that device would be a Class 3 device. In other words, like owning a silencer, suppressor, really. But everybody calls it a silencer, so it's Kleenex. That's the common word. So, but in any case, it would turn all those into Class 3 items, which would mean a $200 tax stamp and federal registration for it. And, of course, if you wanted to take it out of your state, you'd have to notify ATF of your movement. And on top of that, when you die, it gets turned into the government, and you can't sell it or give it to anybody else. Now, I don't know about you, but from time to time, when somebody, one of the guys in my radio station didn't have a gun with him. And so I always have a spare or two with me, usually one on me and then one in my vehicle. And so what I did was I just went out to my car, took the gun off the door. No, actually it was in the vault in the car because I wasn't in it. And I secure things when I'm more than 2 steps away from them. I call that my 2-step rule. I walked out to my car, undid the vault, got the gun out, and gave it to Harry and said, Harry, when you remember your gun, or when you get your gun off a layaway or whatever it was at the time, I don't remember, give me my gun back. And I just handed it to him and walked away. Totally legal where I live. Not a problem. If I feel like handing a gun to someone, as long as I know he's not a prohibited possessor, I can do that.
Right.
Well, that would be a felony under what Dianne Feinstein wants to do.
Sure.
And among many other things. Now, I think what they're going to do is they're going to try a triangulated strategy. They've got Vice President Biden working at this super committee to come up with some ideas. Well, I think what they're going to do is they're going to come up with something that's less draconian than what Feinstein wants, and say, well, we've come to a great compromise, and this is what everybody can live with.
Sure.
The other thing they're going to do is try and bypass all the self-defense civil rights groups. And that's one reason why it's so important that you belong not only to some of the major the gun rights groups in the country, but you belong to your state level ones as well.
Yeah.
For instance, in Arizona, the Arizona Citizens Defense League, we rarely get involved in a national issue, but we're fighting tooth, hammer and tongue for this one. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our state level representatives to influence our federal representatives to absolutely stand up against any kind of such a ban. Because in my state, Senator McCain's not going to take my phone call. Who the heck am I?
Exactly.
But he will take Senator Antonori's phone call from Arizona,
right?
Or Senator Pierce's call, or Senator Melvin's call.
Right.
So.
That's a good point. I mean, we can't get to and I constantly talk to our audience about the fact that we've lost control of our representatives. In other words, one, they don't represent us, and two, even if they thought they did, allegedly, we can't get a hold of them to tell them what we really want anyway. So, you can speak to an aide at best, right? But, one of the things that we've looked for here, and we have a project which we kicked off right after the election called Restore Missouri. And our goal is, because we feel like we've lost control of the federal government entirely, is to pass a number of state resolution and state legislative issues that will actually build a firewall, if you will, or a bulwark around our state to, one, prevent federal overreach, but two, to also kind of clean up things that are problematic in our state. One of which I'd like to see is the Freedom Firearms Act, which states if you have a weapon stamped made in Missouri or made in Montana, they were the first ones to do it, that particular firearm is not subject to any federal regulation whatsoever for either sale, transfer, possession, use, etc. And I think that's an enormous program that, quite frankly, every state ought to have, because it effectively tells the federal government that our 10th Amendment rights, you're on notice. These exist, and we're not going to accept anything less than a full opportunity for our 10th Amendments to be honored and respected. And
Michael, are you aware of the underlying purpose of that?
Underlying purpose of what?
Of that
firearms freedom?
Legislation.
Go ahead. Tell us.
The reason for that is not so that you can drive down the road with any weapon you want, as long as you don't leave the corporate limits of the state of Missouri. The reason for that is because many of us want to challenge some of the federal overreach.
Oh, I get it. I mean, Montana is actually waiting for a challenge to get this to the Supreme Court to utilize it as a 10th Amendment foundational standing argument. And they need standing, and this gives it to them.
Well, be careful. It's not so that individuals will, on an individual basis, manufacture or buy these firearms, not register, or not fill out the 4473 form when they buy them from a dealer, and then drive around with a gun that's, quote, not registered, unquote. That's not what it's for. What this is for is so that someone will enter the manufacturing business, purchase the equipment, or be ready to do it, and then get a letter from ATF saying, if you do this without going through us, we'll prosecute you. Then they'll have standing, and their standing will be that, because the reason is that these appeals that go to the court frequently, in fact, usually get denied review by the court because the people lack standing, because they don't have an articulable damage. I'll give you an example. In the Heller case in 2008, Dick Heller was one of 6 plaintiffs. That case was originally called Parker, but all the other plaintiffs in the case didn't lack standing.
Right.
Heller was the only guy who actually went to the D.C. police and tried to register a gun, and they denied him, and he had proof of it. That was the only reason that case made it to the Supreme Court. And that's what the people in the Firearms Freedom Act are trying to do. They're not trying to make it so that every individual...
No, I understand the exact motivation for it. The goal is to give standing to an individual to go and argue the 10th Amendment right for states to have independence and sovereignty, especially over something as critical as the Second Amendment. I'm thoroughly versed in the arguments. The issue in our state is that we don't have anything along those lines. We have a veto-proof House and Senate, and yet we have a Democratic governor who, quite frankly, rejects almost everything that these folks pass. And so our goal is to utilize that as one tool out of many in a group of legislative initiatives, among those things like right to work, among those things like the ability for us to have a sound monetary policy and things like that, so that irrespective of what the federal government does, our state has the wherewithal and the ability to stand independently. And that we're attractive to other states as well. So
I understand that, but what I'm saying is it's not so that individual people will go out and say, well, my state says you can't regulate me, and if you try, and so they buy a gun or make a gun like that, drive down the road with it, and foolishly think that state law will protect them when that's not what it's designed to do. It's only designed to give standing to someone who wants to go to court and challenge it.
Sure.
And I don't want people to start manufacturing guns in their basement.
Okay.
And then try to be a pro se litigant against the federal government, you're going to lose.
Point well taken. This is an opportunity for a manufacturer, and I'll talk to you off air. There is a local gentleman in our area here who has actually stated that he'd put up one of two pieces of land that he has, a 40-acre and a 100-acre parcel, for any gun manufacturer that would come down here and build a manufacturing plant here. So in fact, I'll talk to you offline about it, but there's a possibility that you may be able to help drive that effort. The goal, of course, is to drive a Firearms Freedom Act manufacturer into the area where we would be able to utilize their manufacturing tools to not only manufacture, then they can manufacture things for other than Missouri, but also to manufacture a Missouri firearm under the Firearms Freedom Act. So that's the goal. That's what we're trying to drive. I think your organization may well have some contacts that would be able to help us with that. Folks, we are discussing the status of the Second Amendment with Mr. Charles Heller. He is the Executive Director for Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. You can visit his website at jpfo.org. I encourage you to do so. I also encourage you to join that organization. This is one of the most aggressive gun rights advocacy groups out there in the country today. And you don't have to be Jewish to join. Just get out there and make it happen. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment, and we will finalize our discussion.
I know what you're thinking, Bunk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Dirty Harry gets all his ammo from the battery station. John Rambo, you guessed it. He gets his ammo from the battery station, too. So if you need ammo, go to the place where the guys who know about ammunition go, the battery station. They have one of the largest supplies of ammunition in the area. So make sure you're stocked up and don't get low on shells. Go to the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains.
If all those taxes go up, all of them go up, because no deal is made, that's a recession that Obama can't take. He would become Herbert Hoover Obama, and his whole second term and his historical legacy would be destroyed right here in the first weeks of his re-election. He can't take that.
That's Larry Kudlow, Saturdays 3 until 6 on 107.1 The Point.
Brian turned to glance at the pilot, who suddenly had both hands on his stomach and was grimacing in pain. I don't know, kid. The pilot's words were a hiss, barely audible. Bad aches here. Bad aches. He stopped as a fresh spasm of pain hit him. The pilot was having a heart attack. Brian saw the pilot slam into the seat one more time. One more awful time he slammed back into the seat, and his right leg jerked, pulling the plane to the side. Brian was sitting in a bush plane roaring 7,000 feet above the northern wilderness with a pilot who had suffered a massive heart attack and who was either dead or in something close to a coma. He was alone. In the roaring plane, he was alone. The plane, committed now to crashing, fell like a stone, and Brian eased back and braced himself for the crash. Explore new worlds. Find out what happens next by reading the book Hatchet by Gary Paulson. For other great book ideas, visit literacy.gov. A message from the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
America's Voice Now with Michael Evans.
All right. Again, we are speaking with Mr. Heller, who is the Executive Director for JPFO, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Encourage you to get out there to their website at jpfo.org. So, just kind of give us a little bit of a in our last few remaining minutes, a background and an understanding of your drive with JPFO, if you don't mind.
Sure. JPFO is a nonprofit. We're an educational organization. We've got a lot of great books and videos. One of the things you can do is order a copy of Innocence Betrayed. It explains in very good detail with a lot of graphics the history of gun control. Gun control is a predicate act for every government murder that occurred in the 20th century. First, the victims were disarmed. And it shows in a very, very graphic way, without being pornographic, what the results of gun control truly are. And you could have a showing of that movie, and you could change hearts and minds with it. If there's any way of getting that movie into the hands of your elected representative, you really should try to do that. I'd love to see a number of people buy the video. Not because I get a toaster if you buy the video. We sell it for about our cost. But if you could get something like that into the hands of your elected representative, you might be able to do emotionally what you will never be able to do with a letter. Second of all, some of the things you can do is go to the local centers of influence, especially synagogues and churches, and show that movie, Innocence Betrayed. If you can do that, you will change hearts and minds without having to get into an argument. That's what our organization does. We help you change hearts and minds. We help you I like to say our rabbi is also a firearms instructor. I like to say our conversions are done by fire, our baptisms are done by fire, not water.
I like that.
So, it's kind of like the guy that finds a bottle on the beach and rubs it, and the genie pops out, and the genie says, "I've been in prison for 2,000 years. I will grant you any one wish." He says, "Allah Akbar, destroy Israel," and poof! Suddenly, the guy who rubbed the lamp is in rags and tattered, and suddenly ages 80 years. And he says, "What is this? What have you done to me?" And the fellow says, "That's what you get for goofing with a Jewish genie." So that's what we represent, the Jewish genie. We want to be the one that puts out the material that goes poof, and the gun control goes away. Now, obviously, that's euphemistic, but the point is, we've got tools for you to be in the fight,
right,
with which you can be in the fight.
Sure.
And we're not the only thing out there, obviously, but if you can get materials like we produce, if you don't want to do a video, we've got some brochures called Grandpa Jack. Grandpa Jack is an avuncular man who teaches his grandchildren and their friends when they come over about the history of gun control, about the truth about self-defense and things like that, in a way that it's made so that children can understand it.
Sure.
And basically, our legislators are kind of children, and maybe they can understand. Anyway,
well, one of the things that I think we can do here locally is, and we do have organizational meetings from time to time, and I think maybe what I'll try to do is obtain a couple of your videos, and maybe we can set up some public events where people can come and see it.
That would be a wonderful thing you could do, and it's a nonviolent educational thing you could do, is help people understand by showing that video and by doing other things. We have a wonderful book called Dial 911 and Die. Do you have a person that ever tells you, well, what do you need a gun for? The police can protect you.
Yeah.
There are many Supreme Court decisions, and Richard Stevens, the attorney who wrote that book, documents in every single state they have cases that say the police are not legally liable for protecting you.
Sure.
As I like to say, yo-yo, you're on your own, and yo-yo, you own your own results.
Well, we live in a very rural area, and I'll tell you, the sheriffs around here will tell you, look, it's 45 minutes to respond when you're out in the county. So, if you're wise when you move here, the first thing you do is buy yourself a good shotgun, if not 2 or 3. And
they say music is the universal language, but I think it's the sound of a 12-gauge slide being racked.
There you go. It sure puts people on notice, doesn't it?
Right.
So, well, listen, I want to thank you so much for spending the time and joining with us this morning, and sharing the views and your insights on this issue. I think that we are coming down to a point where our republic is literally as close as we have ever been to being dissolved. And our firearms ownership rights will be the one thing that stands between us and absolute dissolution of our republic. And so, knowing that there's people out there like you who are fighting tooth and nail to keep that from occurring is a great service.
Keep in mind that the ignition event of the American Revolution was an attempt by the government to seize weapons.
Yes, it was.
And I believe in my heart that if they succeed in getting legislation passed into law that has that same effect, that it will happen again. And I'm not looking forward to that.
No.
I am not. I don't want to be in a society where you have to vote from your rooftop.
Right.
And that's what they may be in the process of creating.
And of course, the tragedy is that, it will be long and drawn out, and anyone who's sitting there and fantasizing about the idea of that is just being foolish about it.
This is not Red Dawn.
No, exactly. And the tragedy and the mayhem that will occur will be just unconscionable. So I fully agree with you. We should do as Churchill said and fight now while we have an opportunity to with words before the words no longer work.
Yep.
So,
Amen.
hey, listen, thank you so very much for being with us.
My pleasure. If people want to reach me directly, Charles Heller at jpfo.org. And if people want to get on our website, it's jpfo.org.
Outstanding. Thank you so much
All right,
again.
thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Okay, folks, that was Mr. Heller, jpfo.org, JP, like Peter, FO.org. It stands for Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, and he is the executive director, Mr. Charles Heller. Strong advocacy group, and I encourage you to make sure that you get out there, visit their organization, join the JPFO, and help assist them in fighting for all of our rights for the Second Amendment. I will mention to you that we also have Larry Pratt, who is the executive director for Gun Owners of America, and he'll be joining us on Friday. So make sure that you mark your calendar for that day. I think it'll be an entertaining and informative hour for you. Join us on Friday for Larry Pratt, Gun Owners of America, Executive Director. I do want to thank Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance for sponsoring this particular discussion this morning, and you folks can make sure that you can thank them by getting to their website at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com, and or you can contact Brian at 870-492-4030, 1/2 mile east of Walmart on Route 62. Also, you can contact our friends over at the Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue, 257-7799, and you can find them on the web at batterystation.com. I'll be posting this particular show up on our YouTube video or YouTube page, and also up on our website. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org. You can also watch this show stream every day live on americasvoicenow.org. If you have friends, if you have family members, if you have associates that you would like to introduce to our show, we're pleased to have them. You can have them watch us and hear the show, even though they may not necessarily be in our geographic broadcast area. And so the best way to accomplish that is to send them to the website and tell them that on the right side, while the show is being performed live in the morning, they can actually watch that show operate live. They can simply click on the button that says "Watch Here Live Now," and they can actually stream the video right onto their screen. So share the word, share the knowledge, share the information, and let's help to make sure that we're getting the word out to as many as is possible. I want to thank this station especially for allowing us to be able to perform these services that we do. You know, we had the Ozark Self-Reliance University over the course of the past 2 weekends. This Saturday coming up, they are going to be again in Willow Springs, and there's going to be a number of informative guests out there, and I'll be speaking there as well. So if you'd like to meet with me personally, you're welcome to come out there. I'd love to meet you. That will be held, and it's up on our website. The schedule is up there. I'll also be talking about it tomorrow as well. But make sure that you are attending these events that we put together for you folks. If you're interested in CCW training, we have an event. I think it's on the 23rd, but whatever that weekend is. Whatever that Saturday will be. If you'd like to get get a seat in that CCW training class, we also have our TAC 1 pistol training classes coming up, our cooperative effort, which we talked about over the weekend at the Ozark Self-Reliance University, and our law seminar coming up. So if you're interested in any of those events, or participating in any of those projects, make sure that you send us an email to Mike at americasvoicenow.org. That's Mike at americasvoicenow.org. Send me an email with the subject line TAC 1 Pistol Training, CCW, Cooperative, that's our food co-op program, where you can buy wholesale food at wholesale prices in bulk, and also Law Seminar. Whichever of those has your interest, make sure that you let us know so that we can give you the details on that. I do want to mention that you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And also, you can find us on YouTube, where we post up these types of interviews all the time. You can find those at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We make it really easy for you folks to find us on the web. I know there's plenty of people out there that don't have access to it, but I would encourage you to either get access to it or get to your local library or someplace where you can get free access somewhere else. Hey, listen, we're going to wrap it up for today. We will have, again, Larry Pratt, Gun Owners of America, Executive Director, with us on Friday. So make sure you mark that on your calendar. Invite your friends and your family members and people that you know to pay attention and hear that show. I think you'll find it to be informative. We'll see you folks tomorrow. Have a great day.
.107.1 The Point, KBMV, Birch Tree, West Plains.
Fox News Radio, I'm Dave Anthony. 2 years ago today, gunshots in Tucson, Arizona. A shooting spree that left 6 dead and nearly killed former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. Now she is a gun control advocate, unveiling an initiative to raise money to curb gun violence. Her husband, Mark Kelly, is joining her, telling ABC he was moved